Chapter 2762. His eyes were focused and serious. In his mind, there was a blurry face that he couldn't see clearly. That face was smiling at him. Her coquettish voice seemed to be able to soothe all the bad emotions in his heart. Ah, Xian, I want to grow up alone. I want to rely on my own strength to stand by your side and walk side by side with you. The girl was smiling. Vaguely, he seemed to see that alluring face. It only took an instant for everything to return to its previous tranquility. Dmo Xian shut his deep eyes. He forcefully suppressed the restlessness that was constantly surging in his heart. He knew that person was Lil Luo'er. Even if their appearances were different. He could also confirm that person was Lil Luo'er. He promised little Luo'er. It would give little Luo'er a chance to grow. He should believe in Lil Luo'er. His little Luo'er would become stronger when meeting strong opponents, and weaker when meeting weak opponents. There was absolutely no problem. However, there was always a voice in his heart that kept floating in his mind. They were clamoring for him to charge forward. Protect his little Luo'er. Protect his Lil Luo'er. He would not let Lil Luo'er be harmed in the slightest. Dmo Xian clenched his fist tightly, as he clenched it even harder. Everyone's attention was gathered on Yiqing Luo's side. No one noticed it. Dmo Xian's eyes were hidden under the mask. His gaze towards Yiqing Luo was filled with determination and forbearance. Sometimes, they were infatuated with each other. This was the struggle between the love worm and Dmo Xian's consciousness. Love goo activated his consciousness. He wanted him to protect Yiqing Luo unconditionally. Whereas, the memories regarding Yiqing Luo kept replaying in Dmo Xian's mind. Such a crisscrossing consciousness was activated. This made Dmo Xian's body gradually tensed up. However, no one noticed this. Even if he found out, he would only treat it as worrying about Yiqing Luo. The other side. Yiqing Luo raised her head up high and squinted her eyes slightly, looking at the second palace lord who was suspended in midair. The corners of her mouth curled into a teasing smile, revealing a hint of carelessness. It was as if he didn't care about the second palace master at all. But Yiqing Luo indeed didn't treat the second palace lord as anything. She admitted. The assistant palace master was indeed very strong. Indeed, it was above her profound rank. However, it was not that she was no match for the deputy palace master. Just as Dmo Xian had said. She had a physique that grew stronger when encountering the strong and weaker when encountering the weak. The stronger the opponent. Only then would her fighting spirit be aroused. The stronger the opponent. Only then would she be able to gain actual combat experience and grow. Most importantly, as the saying goes, the connoisseur recognizes the artistry, while the layman enjoys the show. In the eyes of the crowd, the surging waves of terrifying aura of the second palace master were extremely horrifying and intimidating. But, in the eyes of Yiqing Luo and the other top exponents, that second palace master kept showing off and creating cool, special effects. From the start, it didn't have the slightest bit of actual strength. In the air, layers upon layers of airwaves were constantly surging. Behind the second palace master, the streaks of lightning that had been torn apart continuously converged and spread out bit by bit. The profound chi, at this moment, suddenly expanded. The second palace master's gaze was like a torch as he stared coldly at Yiqing Luo. His raised arm instantly pointed downwards towards Yiqing Luo's face. Anyone who dares to offend my secluded palace shall be killed without mercy. The raging waves of profound chi were like huge waves surging as it attacked the biting cold profound chi. At the same time, Yiqing Luo could clearly feel the surging profound chi blowing towards her face. Chapter 2763. Yiqing Luo's brows rose as the smile on her lips blossomed like a poppy. His eyes were gradually filled with excitement. Her eyes flickered and her entire temperament suddenly changed. She was an elegant and lovely little beauty. At this moment, she had turned into a bloodthirsty and enchanting demon. Her eyes were filled with smiles as she looked at the incoming attack. This time, she had no intention of dodging. Instead, her palms moved and her fingertips danced like a dancing fairy. A red feather fan appeared on her fingertips. Swoosh! The feather fan was opened and the red profound glow lingered around the feather fan. Under the lightning cliff, it gave off an extremely demonic aura. Like a scorching flame, burning continuously. With Yiqing Luo as the epicenter, the ground started to crack, densely like a spider web as the cracks spread out. All these seemed to have taken quite a bit of effort. In actual fact, it was merely a moment. Bam! Vice Palace Lord's attack landed directly. Dust and thick and terrifying air waves rolled, enveloping Yiqing Luo's surroundings instantly. It engulfed and covered up everything in the surroundings. Everyone's gazes were fixed on that area which was engulfed by the numerous air waves. One by one, they shook their heads and sighed. Indeed, indeed. Earth Profound 9th grade was after all not comparable to the Sky Mystic Overlord and above. However, with just one move, he had easily taken care of a 9th grade Earth Profound Realm Xian practitioner. The power of the Gloomy Palace was indeed well deserved. Some even felt that if the Vice Palace Lord was so powerful, then the Grand Palace Lord of the Gloomy Palace could be on the same level as the Overlord? No wonder the Gloomy Palace dared to say such words. To be able to surpass the Imperial Palace within a month. Looking at the Gloomy Palace, they could easily annihilate a bunch of powerful guards. Another Earth Profound 9th grade cultivator which Master Ghost Martial Artist had high hopes of. This Gloomy Palace could absolutely surpass the Imperial Palace. Ding! All of a sudden, a crisp sound could be heard. The sound was extremely hurried. Instantly, it attracted everyone's attention. Only to see in that dust and air waves. A bewitching red glow gradually spread out. The boundless air waves rolled like a tide. In just a few breaths' time, he had completely suppressed that powerful air wave. The red light continued to spread. It dispersed the chi wave created by the Second Palace Master. Amidst the red light, the young girl's red dress fluttered in the wind like a blossoming rose, extremely flirtatious. The girl held a burning fan in her hand, and her fingers danced in the air. The fan opened and closed, like a fire elf, flying in the air waves. Clang! There was the sound of things colliding again. Yiqing Luo opened her arms wide. The fan in her hand, unknowingly, had already left Yiqing Luo's hand. It was moving at an extremely fast speed. He broke through the layers of air waves created by the Second Palace Master. It struck a long sword in front of the Second Palace Master. The instant the fan hit the long sword, the sword trembled. The layer of black mist that shrouded the long sword suddenly dispersed. Thump! A heavy object fell to the ground. The long sword fell to the ground. At the same time, the body of the Second Palace Master, who was floating in the air, swayed and unexpectedly fell down uncontrollably. The Second Palace Master's robes fluttered like butterfly wings. The black veil on her face was lifted, revealing half of her face. Yiqing Luo's gaze coincidentally fell on that half of her face. Suddenly, her eyes dimmed and her body froze. That face, was it her illusion? If she didn't remember wrongly. Chapter 2764. Damn it. This unforeseen event caused the Assistant Palace Master's tone to be filled with killing intent. She raised her wrist abruptly. Just as she was about to land on the ground, a thick black fog surrounded her body. His rapidly falling body instantly landed steadily on the ground as light as a feather. She steadied herself and flipped her wrist once again. The long sword on the ground seemed to be sucked by something as it returned to her palm. Second Palace Lord's weapon is just a long sword? The young lady's clear voice was heard from behind. Her hand which was holding the long sword stiffened. Immediately, she turned sideways and tried to escape. But her feet had just started to move. He placed a hand on the Second Palace Master's shoulder. The young lady's extremely melodious voice was heard clearly. Isn't Second Palace Lord going to clear the name of secluded palace? Why did you run away so impatiently the moment you saw me? The young lady was still smiling. That soft and slender fingers which were pinching on her shoulder looked weak and boneless. But she couldn't break free at all. As for the young lady, she didn't move at all. Under Yi Qing Luo's strength, the second palace master turned around. She raised her eyes and met with a pair of narrow and devilish eyes. That pair of eyes were as bright as the stars, sparkling brightly. And faintly, there was a glint of flowing light. Just a glance. The second palace master had a feeling as though her soul was being sucked away. It was Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo's seemingly elegant face, but her aura did not diminish at all. The second palace master's heart thumped fiercely. Her mind recalled that person's exhortation in her ear, "Be careful, especially towards that lady named Yi Qing Luo, you must be on guard. Her ability is not as good as yours, but her potential is terrifying." She thought that in this lower realm, even if she met any genius cultivator, that person could only be considered as a genius from the lower realm. Because of that, she didn't put that person's exhortation to heart. However, at that moment, she seemed to have understood what that person meant. The second palace master's eyes turned slightly cold. She had underestimated her opponent. This time round, she would not give Yi Qing Luo any chance to retaliate. A thought flashed across his mind. The vice palace master's expression suddenly became cold and gloomy. At the same time, profound qi surged from the assistant palace master's body. Two streams of profound qi that looked like black fog shot out from her body. Transforming into two rays of profound light, with an irresistible force, it shot towards Yi Qing Luo's face, directly piercing downwards. But, the assistant palace master's plan failed again. Just as the second palace master's expression changed, Yi Qing Luo had already sensed it. At the moment when the Xian Qi of the second palace master surged wildly, she immediately let go of her hands and moved to a safe place. Yi Qing Luo wasn't flustered in the slightest, the expression on her face was calm and tranquil. It was a stark contrast to the deputy palace master's eyes, which were filled with rage. Is the second palace lord getting serious? Yi Qing Luo's sweet voice was mixed with a slight smile. She looked like the girl next door, pure and innocent. However, the second palace master could see it clearly. The young lady's smiling eyes revealed a trace of ridicule. The vice palace master's eyes darkened, her profound qi surged once again, her eyes were aghast as she gave Yi Qing Luo a warning stare. Chapter 2765. As she said that, she looked meaningfully at the long sword in Second Palace Lord's hand. Second Palace Lord's eyes were filled with emotions as her bewitching eyes stared widely. How do you know that this weapon isn't my weapon? Yi Qing Luo shook her glower flame fan and held it against her lower jaw. The long sword's body is wide and the sword hilt is thick and the surface is stained with too much filthy blood stench. It doesn't look like a lady's weapon. She raised her brows and continued confidently, this long sword should be given to Second Palace Lord by someone who values Second Palace Lord, to protect Second Palace Lord. Earlier, Second Palace Lord was suspended in midair, when she was creating all kinds of powerful pressure. The long sword was firmly placed in front of the second palace master's body. It was because she sensed that the long sword didn't look like second palace lord's weapon. That was why Yi Qing Luo directly struck down that long sword. As expected. Just as she had guessed. This second palace lord was the source of most of the profound energy. It was because of that long sword. What a observant young lady. When Second Palace Lord heard that, she didn't continue to refute. She sneered as she placed the long sword on her body and spoke coldly, "Young lady, since you're looking for death, I shall fulfill your wish." Her words had just ended. Second Palace Lord opened her fingers. A long whip with 9 segments appeared in her hand. The surrounding guests all sucked in a breath of cold air when they saw that long whip clearly. On that long whip, there was a tide of black fog which kept surging. Faintly, there was a flash of lightning like flowing light. It gave out a hissing sound. Was that a long whip or a poisonous snake? No matter how the crowd looked, they couldn't see clearly what the soft object under the fog was. When Yiqing Luo saw Second Palace Lord's weapon, her expression dimmed slightly as the serene look in her eyes turned deeper. Long whip. It was indeed a long whip. She didn't see it wrongly. This Second Palace Lord's face. Yiqing Luo stared at the layer of black veil on Second Palace Lord's face. Her gaze was burning as though it was burning. Second Palace Lord was distracted by Yiqing Luo's presumptuous gaze. She clenched the long whip tightly as the black qi lingered around it and struck directly. A powerful wave of qi swept out. The surging waves once again filled the air. Yiqing Luo's lips curled into a sneer as she casually played with the glower flame fan in her hands. The moment the Second Palace Master's attack landed, Yiqing Luo's figure swayed. The two sides clashed. This time round, Yiqing Luo didn't adopt any battle tactics. Instead, he faced the Assistant Palace Master head-on. Powerful airwaves constantly rolled in the air. The sky that was as dark as ink was covered densely with dark clouds at this moment, and it was mixed with lightning and thunder, causing the atmosphere to be extremely strange. Over here, the battle was in full swing. On the other side, it was completely impossible to see the silhouettes of both parties clearly, and they could only feel the vast and boundless profound energy. At this moment, the guests, who were bursting forth and rolling about, were in an uproar. A guest pointed at the two people fighting, his face full of disbelief. "Did I see wrongly? Just now I saw." Glowing flame fan? That woman called Yi Luo has the gourd flame fan? Gourd flame fan. Isn't that the weapon used by that young hero of the Western continent? Gourd flame fan. There seems to be only one in this world. Why is it in Yi Luo's hands? The appearance of the gourd flame fan aroused the suspicions of numerous guests. Chapter 2766. Most of the people in Nirvana realm knew about Yiqing Luo's deeds. Naturally, they knew about Yiqing Luo's exclusive weapon. Suddenly, the guests thought of something as they exclaimed, "Yi Luo! Yiqing Luo!" The Overlord has publicly acknowledged the future mistress of the Imperial Palace, dressed in red, devastatingly beautiful. Overlord. Red. Yi Luo, Yiqing Luo. The guests at this moment in their minds, regrouped all these symbols together. Everything, indicated. The lady named Yi Luo in front of them was the little hero of the West Continent, Yiqing Luo. And only Yiqing Luo could possess the only glower flame fan in the world. And only Yiqing Luo could get so much attention from the Overlord. And only Yiqing Luo, at such a young age, her profound grade had already broken through the sky profound stage, becoming the only one in Nirvana realm at such a young age, to step into the sky profound stage. Not earth profound 9th grade, but sky profound supreme. She is Yiqing Luo. The Yiqing Luo who is known as the female version of the Overlord? Suddenly, among the guests, a sharp female voice was heard. Only to see a slender figure in a cloak, covering her face, suddenly stood up and stared at the two people who were entangled with each other. Her tone was filled with disbelief. On the side, a figure in the same cloak grabbed the arm of the lady in front and shook it anxiously. The lady in front turned her head to look at the lady behind her, and impatiently shook her hand away. That lady staggered and fell onto the ground. The surrounding was a long table. The lady's head directly hit the long table when she fell. A loud dong sound was heard. It was extremely loud. When the crowd heard it, they felt a pain in their head. But unfortunately, that lady rubbed her forehead and stood up without a word. Not even a cry of pain was made. The lady in front didn't feel guilty because of her own actions. The wide black cloak covered her expression. Only to hear her slightly hoarse voice, sharp and ear-piercing. How could she be Yiqing Luo? Impossible. She is obviously a lowly student. The guests only felt that this voice sounded extremely familiar. But at this moment, they couldn't recall. The guests sitting next to the woman suddenly looked at each other. Then, they stood up at the same time and rushed toward the woman who was rubbing her forehead. The woman was caught off guard and her hands were tightly held by the two guests. The guest raised his hand and lifted the woman's cloak. Under the cloak, a small and delicate face was revealed. The expressions of the two guests suddenly changed. Princess Beilan? Wasn't this woman the Northern Wave Continent's princess, Xia Lingling? Why was Xia Lingling here? Wasn't the Northern Wave imperial family in imminent danger? Xia Lingling's position as the princess was already in jeopardy. How could Xia Lingling appear here? Wait, this is Xia Lingling. Then, who was that sharp-tongued lady? When the woman saw that Xia Lingling's face had been exposed, she cursed softly, "Trash." He quickly turned around, intending to leave. However, the crowd who had already found out about Yi Qing Luo's true identity. He couldn't wait to find a chance to curry favor with Yi Qing Luo. How could they possibly let off that lady who obviously had enmity with Yi Qing Luo? Immediately, a few guests swarmed up and held that woman down. Lifting the black cloak. That person, wasn't she East Wave's young princess, Lan Ling Noa? Chapter 2767. After Lan Ling Noa was discovered, her expression instantly became somewhat ugly. She bit her lower lip tightly. The surrounding people were sizing her up with gazes which made her feel extremely embarrassed. But both her hands were restrained by the guests, so there was no way for her to struggle. Xia Lingling made a nasal sound towards Lan Ling Noa's direction. Her eyes were filled with fear and uneasiness. The crowd then recalled. Xia Lingling's tongue had already been plucked out by the overlord. So it's these two young princesses who are about to become commoners. Do you feel especially slapped on the face? Some of them had long disliked these two princesses' way of doing things, and now that they had the chance, they couldn't help but ridicule them. Previously I always felt that no matter if it was status, ability, or looks, I'm much stronger than Miss Yi. But now... Miss Yi is the little hero of the West Continent, a genius with outstanding ability. The crowd roared with laughter. But they had long forgotten about it. Before this, their own, Lan Ling Noa and Xia Lingling's attitude towards Yi Qing Luo was no different. Just as the crowd was making a ruckus, a low and sullen voice, like 1,000 caddy lead brick, fell heavily on everyone's hearts, pressuring them till they couldn't breathe. Shut up. It was just two simple words. The laughter and clamor stopped abruptly. The crowd turned their gazes towards the man who spoke out. His tall figure was tall and towering. Under the half-gold-rimmed mask, two eyes that were as deep as a lake seemed to be condensed with layers of frost. This was Yi Qing Luo's fiancé? No, Yi Qing Luo's fiancé. Wasn't he the overlord? This man was the overlord? The crowd's hearts suddenly felt a suffocating feeling. All the words were stuck in their throats. They didn't dare to make any noise. After all, Yi Qing Luo was still in a life-and-death struggle with the second palace lord of Secluded Palace. The overlord's emotions were definitely unstable. If they made any noise and touched Yi Qing Luo's bad luck, they would definitely be punished by the overlord. After a few big moves clashed against the moves, Yi Qing Luo and Vice Palace Lord both retreated backwards. Because of the collision of the two's profound energies, the entire plaza's ground had already cracked open into pieces. The ground was full of holes and gravel. The raised platform and the flags fell to the ground. No matter how the two of them fought, it didn't even affect the guests. Second Palace Master retracted his long whip. His eyes were sinister as if he was dipped in poison, ruthlessly cutting Yi Qing Luo's body. You really have some skills. Yi Qing Luo's fingertips flicked as she played with the glower flame fan. Her jade-white fingers fused with the raging flames. In the eyes of others, Yi Qing Luo was like a fairy who controlled the flames, noble and mysterious. She raised her lips and smiled in a low voice. Her eyes were also smiling. Vice Palace Master, you couldn't beat me before. Now, no matter what method you use to quickly raise your profound level. But, I can tell you for sure, you can't beat me no matter what. The Vice Palace Master clenched his fists and frowned. What do you mean? Before what? Did I know you before? 3 consecutive questions made Yi Qing Luo squinted her eyes. She stared at the Vice Palace Master confidently for some time. Her carefree expression slowly converged and turned grave. Chapter 2768. Second Palace Lord's brows creased even tighter. The eyes under the veil looked at Yi Qing Luo in bewilderment. She seemed to be pondering whether Yi Qing Luo's actions were some kind of scheme, trying to lure her into a trap. Second Palace Lord's silence. Yi Qing Luo saw it all. She could clearly see the unfamiliarity in Second Palace Lord's eyes. Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips and paused for a moment. Wait, are you sure you don't recognize me? After she finished her words, she raised her slender fingers and caressed her face. Her fingers were tapping and exploring her face at an extremely fast speed. In just a moment, an extremely thin layer of something, like a water droplet, rolled on her palm. That is indeed, it's Yi Qing Luo. Heavens! Indeed, as the rumors described, a red robe that could topple the world. This is simply able to topple all living things. I will not say that the rumors are fake anymore. The moment Yi Qing Luo's thin mask was removed, the surrounding guests immediately burst into an uproar. It wasn't that they hadn't seen a beauty before, but they had never seen such an exquisite, enchanting beauty. Plus, the beauty was noble and elegant, with an unattainable temperament. What's more, once people's gazes landed on her, they couldn't take their eyes off her. The young lady's skin was crystal clear, as fair as snow. Especially that exquisite picturesque face. Devastatingly beautiful, peerlessly enchanting. Slender eyebrows, dazzling eyes. So beautiful that it made one suffocate. The guests exclaimed one after another. To tell the truth, when they saw East Billow's young princess, Lan Ling Noa, they really felt that Lan Ling Noa deserved the title of East Billow's #1 beauty. But now that they had seen Yi Qing Luo's real face, Lan Ling Noa's so-called #1 beauty title was simply a slap on the face. Compared to Yi Qing Luo, the difference was not just 1 or 2 points. And when Yi Qing Luo's face was revealed, Xia Lingling and Lan Ling Noa, who were restrained by the guests, immediately had a change of expression. Lan Ling Noa's struggle was forgotten. Her pair of beautiful eyes seemed to be coated with poison as she stared fiercely at Yi Qing Luo's direction. Impossible. How could this be possible? That ugly girl, how could she be Yi Qing Luo? This must be fake. You're all lying to me. Lan Ling Noa couldn't accept this and roared in anger. Xia Lingling's eyes widened in astonishment. Her body, which was held by the guests, began to tremble slightly. She could not speak. But the frantic shaking of her head showed that she was the same as Lan Ling Noa, unable to believe everything that was happening before her eyes. Whereas for Yi Qing Luo, towards the guests' reactions, she had no reaction at all. She put the skin back into the profound phoenix ring. Shortly after, she placed her finger on her chin and fixed her charming eyes on the second palace master. Now, do you recognize it? The second palace master's tightly knitted eyebrows had already formed several wrinkles. Second palace lord looked at Yi Qing Luo's devastatingly beautiful face. There wasn't a single bit of shock or hatred in her eyes which Yi Qing Luo had expected. Gradually, a layer of vigilance appeared in the eyes of the second palace master. He asked doubtfully, "Who are you? Why should this consort recognize you?" The look in the vice palace master's eyes and her unfamiliar tone of voice. This made Yi Qing Luo restrain the emotions in her eyes. Had she seen wrongly earlier? Or this so-called second palace master had lost her memory? If the second palace master was really that person. At the moment she saw her. Chapter 2769. However, just now, when the second palace master's veil flew up, it landed on Yiqing Luo's face. But it was clearly imprinted in her mind. That face had been in her memory for more than 10 years, how could he be mistaken? Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips, her eyes congealed slightly as she asked word by word, are you Yiqing Qian? He had seen the face of the deputy palace master from the very beginning. It was no different from Yiqing Qian's face. That was why she had noticed the weapon used by the second palace master. Then, he forced the second palace master to reveal her true weapon, the long whip. Yiqing Qian's weapon was a long whip. This made Yiqing Luo even more certain of the second palace lord's identity. However, she took off her human skin and revealed her true appearance. The deputy palace master's reaction made her doubt her own conjecture. Yiqing Qian. The second palace lord murmured this name softly, without any other emotions in his eyes. Obviously, the second palace master was also unfamiliar with this name. Could it be, second palace lord really wasn't Yiqing Qian? Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased even tighter. In his mind, he kept recalling the last time he saw Yiqing Qian. In her memory, Yiqing Qian was fed a pill by her to hang on to her life. Then, she beat him into a meat patty. Her face was completely ruined. His body had also become a pile of rotten meat. In the end, the wolf saint technique gave up. The effect of the medicine could only last for a few hours at most. Once the effect of the drug wore off, Yiqing Qian would rot and die in agony. However, the second palace master in front of him, regardless of appearance or figure, she was no different from Yiqing Qian. What was going on? Little girl, I don't have time to waste on you. Don't think of any roundabout schemes, I won't fall for it. Vice Palace Master's hair stood on end from Yiqing Luo's gaze. After the goosebumps, it was followed by the frustration of being humiliated. The second Palace Master's long whip moved, and his profound energy surged, once again setting off raging waves. Profound chi that caused one's heart to palpitate swept out like a tide. The airwaves lingering in the air were also rolling more and more violently. Yiqing Luo's reaction was swift, at the instance when the second palace master made his move. She moved quickly. A glimmer of light flickered in her charming eyes. With a flick of her fingers, the glowing flame fan unfurled itself from her fingertips. Carrying a profound energy that could contend against the second palace master, she directly welcomed the attack. Meanwhile, Yiqing Luo's feet floated swiftly. His movement technique, which had been fused with the teleportation secret art, was unleashed to its fullest in this instant. In the blink of an eye, second palace lord's long whip had just collided with Yiqing Luo's profound chi. The sound of air currents rippling could be heard. The second palace master's expression changed as he realized something. She retracted her whip and quickly retreated. However, even if the second palace master's reaction speed was already godlike, it was still not enough. However, he was still a step too late. Just as the second palace master retreated, a red figure followed like a shadow into the eyes of the assistant palace master. The girl's pink lips curled up slightly, and there was a trace of unknown emotion in her eyes. She held out her hand. Her slender fair fingers tugged on the second palace master's black veil. The young girl's pink lips moved slightly, and using a voice that only the two of them could hear, she said, although, second palace master's performance made me feel that I might have seen wrongly. But, if I don't confirm it with my own eyes, I'm afraid I won't be able to be at ease. Presumptuous. The second palace master's eyes widened, as she raised her hand and slapped down on the young girl's shoulder. But Yiqing Luo laughed softly. Chapter 2770. At the same time, under her feet, a complicated footwork was displayed at this moment. Second palace lord's palm wind barely brushed past Yiqing Luo's shoulder and hit the ground. And the black veil on Second Palace Lord's face was pulled down by Yi Qing Luo. That veil was fixed to Second Palace Lord's hair. Yi Qing Luo's pull. She also pulled the hairpin fixed to Second Palace Lord's hair. A head of black hair, scattered messily, like ink, pouring behind her. Without the black veil covering her face, it was revealed in Yi Qing Luo's eyes. The woman's face was exquisite, a pair of captivating eyes, slightly raised, giving a very seductive arc, small and straight nose. Bright red lips, revealing a tempting luster. This face. It was indeed Yi Qing Qian's face. Exactly the same facial features, not a single bit different. But it felt like something was different. For example, temperament. Like. Feeling. As compared to the previous Yi Qing Qian. This face was more captivating. In the most straightforward words, it was. The previous Yi Qing Qian, even if she was smiling, flirtatious. In other people's eyes, this was indeed very beautiful. But beauty was only that for a moment. Once it was over, it would be thrown to the back of one's mind. But the current Yi Qing Qian was different. The current Yi Qing Qian had a kind of extremely seductive temperament. The entire person was like a fox spirit, transforming into a human. Every move, every smile, and every frown. Both of them exuded a kind of unforgettable charm that would be engraved in one's heart. This person was Yi Qing Qian, but also not Yi Qing Qian. Yi Qing Luo stared at Second Palace Lord's face. Her half-squinted eyes had some fluctuations. At the guest seating, numerous people also saw Second Palace Lord's face. One must know, Yi Qing Qian's identity was the eldest miss of Three Springs sect. Although Yi Qing Luo took over the position of young sect master. But, in the entire Nirvana realm, who didn't treat Yi Qing Qian as the next Three Springs sect master? Because of this, Yi Qing Qian represented the Yi family, attending many banquets. Her portrait was also circulated in Nirvana realm. Naturally, many people recognized her. Immediately, they couldn't help but shout out, Yi Qing Qian. This name, which could be considered familiar, became a hot topic among the guests. The Second Palace Master's ashen face gradually turned uglier and uglier as he listened to the discussions around him. An indescribable emotion surged in her beautiful eyes. Gradually, she raised her hand and touched her face. From her mouth, she lightly spat out 3 words, Yi Qing Qian. As his voice fell, the Second Palace Master clenched his fists and a strange sneer appeared on his face. She kept her whip and turned around, walking towards the direction of the sedan. Take them, let's go. The Second Palace Master lifted the black veil and sat in the sedan. The 4 beautiful maids each grabbed Mei, Yan Zhenfei, Sun Yutong, and the others, then lifted the palanquin and flew away. Yi Qing Luo stood at her original spot, with no intention to stop him. They watched as the Second Palace Master's palanquin disappeared into the ink-black sky. The cold and charming voice of the Vice Palace Master came with the wind. Little girl, don't celebrate too early. The Palace of Darkness will take revenge for your offense. The wind stopped. The voice dissipated. Yi Qing Luo narrowed her eyes as she kept her glower flame fan. Just as she was about to return to Dmo Xian's side. She hadn't even turned around. A strong and powerful arm had already encircled her waist. Chapter 2771. Yi Qing Luo's eyes were filled with a smile as she turned around and her arms circled around the person behind her, a Xian. His arms tightened around her waist. It was very powerful. It was as if he wanted to rub her delicate body into his. Yi Qing Luo had just turned around and was only able to call out his name. The man's overbearing and forceful kiss drowned out all sounds. He kissed her very hard. It was different from the gentleness and cautiousness from before. Instead, it was a kind of ferocity that was close to that of a wild beast, as if it wanted to swallow her whole. Yi Qing Luo's breathing was almost swallowed by him. The mask on the man's face was somewhat enchanting. Yi Qing Luo's mind went blank for a moment. Her hands gripped the man's collar tightly. In the end, he had almost no strength left. She could only rely on Dmo Xian's arm to support her body. Perhaps it was because Dmo Xian's kiss was too intense. Perhaps it was because they were in public, and there were at least 700 or 800 people watching from the side. Yi Qing Luo's face was extremely red. The reaction was also very strong. Finally, after this kiss, Dmo Xian let her off when he saw that she was out of breath. However, his arms were still tightly wrapped around her. Ah, Xian. Her voice sounded a little broken because of her panting, and it was extremely flirtatious. Dmo Xian's body tensed up as he increased the strength of his arms and his warm breath heavily sprayed onto the skin beside her ear. Lil Luo, I did it. I did it. His voice was hoarse. It was as if he was restraining some kind of emotion. He restrained himself for a long, long time. He kept murmuring these 4 words. Yi Qing Luo didn't quite understand what Dmo Xian meant. But she could also feel the ups and downs of Dmo Xian's emotions. She wrapped her arms around his waist. Her gentle voice comforted him. Dmo Xian placed his head on her shoulder. Lil Luo, I promised you that I would give you the chance to grow, to give you the chance to walk side by side with me. I did it. I didn't stop you from growing. The man's light words fell into Yi Qing Luo's ears. She felt as if something had touched her heart fiercely. Her eyes became misty. She tightened her grip, raised her head, and said with trembling lips, You remember? I know, the face in my mind, is you. Dmo Xian gazed deeply at the devastatingly beautiful face in front of him, filled with certainty. After Yi Qing Luo heard that, the touch in her heart grew deeper. Her hand moved from his waist to his face. Her slender fingers gently cupped his face. Even if it was covered by half a mask, he was still as peerless as ever. Her fingers trembled slightly. Her charming eyes reflected a man's face. Her Ah Xian did not remember the past. Ah Xian was poisoned by the love goo. Ah Xian, who cared about her wholeheartedly. Even in such a dangerous situation earlier, he did not make a move. Just because, he had promised her before. Yi Qing Luo could almost imagine, Ah Xian, who had been poisoned by the love goo, had to use a lot of willpower to restrain the love goo. Yi Qing Luo's nose felt a little sour. Her curly long lashes were stained with some moisture. Her pink lips rose slightly, as she cupped Dmo Xian's face. Bit by bit, she tiptoed and kissed his lips. Between her lips, a young lady's soft murmur drifted into his ear. Chapter 2772. The man's heart had been disturbed by the young lady's kiss. He heard the young lady's murmuring confession again. His body suddenly tensed up. Every piece of muscle, smooth lines. Yi Qing Luo nestled in his arms. Naturally she could feel the changes in the man's body. She raised her brows slightly and raised her head. Then she saw the man's pair of overjoyed eyes. It wasn't hard to tell that the man's face under the mask was overjoyed and had a dazed expression. She had confessed her love to Dmo Xian quite a number of times. But this was the first time she confessed to the man who had been poisoned by the love goo, whose mind was only filled with her. Yi Qing Luo's eyes curved into a smile. The long and narrow arc was full of charm. She hooked the man's collar with one hand and her laughter was tainted with some evilness. Ah Xian, I'm already so direct, don't tell me, you're not going to give me any response? The man seemed to have awoken from his dream as his peach blossom eyes fixed on her face. He still had a dazed look. Yi Qing Luo smiled again. Dmo Xian opened his thin lips as his peach blossom eyes were filled with joy. I love little Luo the most. The words were at the tip of his tongue. Suddenly, it stopped abruptly. Dmo Xian's pupils constricted fiercely. A strange emotion surged up in his eyes. Yi Qing Luo's smile instantly froze on her face. This was the omen of the centrifugal force goo acting up. What was going on? Why did the centrifugal force goo suddenly act up? Yi Qing Luo's heart sank instantly. Las Luo, he has the centrifugal force goo in his body and you still want to arouse his love for you. The centrifugal force goo will naturally not be happy. Old Man Song's helpless voice was heard in her mind. The main purpose of the centrifugal force goo is to drive the overlord and you apart, to let him kill you personally. Just now, Di Zun recalled his past with you in the form of the love goo. The battle between the consciousness of his main body and the love goo has consumed most of his energy. Now, you've made him love you even more. Yi Qing Luo, she was just touched, just agitated, couldn't help but want to be intimate with his Xian. Was this wrong? Little girl, now is not the time to talk about right and wrong. Old Man Song interrupted Yi Qing Luo's thoughts. This is the Miao tribe's saintess selection ceremony and numerous guests are watching from the side. What you should consider is how to restrain the venerable overlord of the centrifugal worm. Don't let others see the abnormality of the venerable overlord. Old Man Song's reminder made Yi Qing Luo's heart sink. Right, there were so many guests around, especially in the Miao tribe's territory. Once the news of Dmo Xian being poisoned was spread out, not only would Dmo Xian suffer from a large-scale attack, the gloomy palace would definitely make use of this opportunity to make the arch palace fall and rise. Yi Qing Luo clenched her fists tightly. When she saw Dmo Xian's pair of warm and affectionate peach blossom eyes, gradually turning into an unfamiliar icy chill, she abruptly raised her hand and hooked onto Dmo Xian's neck. Dmo Xian had just switched modes and had yet to react. She directly kissed his lips. Moreover, the kiss was very forceful. Dmo Xian's muffled groan could be heard faintly. It was obvious that his lips were broken. Yi Qing Luo didn't bother about it as her other hand hooked onto his neck. Dmo Xian's brows creased as he raised his hand and wanted to send this audacious young lady flying. But, when his gaze fell onto that alluring face, his hand paused slightly. The delicate soft body that was forcefully stuffed tightly clung onto his body. The young lady's fragrance seeped into his nose. Chapter 2773. This alluring face was very unfamiliar. But Dmo Xian felt that it was familiar. In his mind, he automatically overlapped this face with the bold lady who had been rude to him several times before. This was Yi Luo. Dmo Xian's eyes flickered slightly, his arm was about to move. The young lady's hand wrapped around his body, as if soft and boneless, hanging on his body softly. The young lady's lips were a little distance away from him. Vaguely, a trace of crystal could be seen. Yi Qing Luo raised her eyes, her long and narrow eyes, deliberately dyed with a trace of poppy-like charm, smiled wickedly. Overlord, let's talk about a deal, how about it? The young lady's fragrance, like orchid, blended with his breath. Dmo Xian faintly felt that his heart was spreading some kind of emotion, constantly gnawing at his heart. Trying to avoid this complicated emotion. Trying to push the young lady away. But, the young lady came closer again. Their lips were almost touching. The young lady's enchanting eyebrows became more and more soul-stirring. That pair of glistening eyes, the rays of light flowed, sparkling. Just looking into her eyes, it was as if he had sunk into her charm. Unable to extricate himself. And unable to control himself. Dmo Xian's eyes deepened. This woman was really an evildoer. An evildoer who bewitched people, bewitched the masses. There had never been anyone, like her, who could affect his emotions, his thoughts. But, she was able to break his taboo time and time again. This feeling of being affected by a woman, his emotions. It really made him unhappy. Dmo Xian's eyes deepened. As if he was pondering about something. Or as if he was quietly looking at something. The man's eyes were very deep, very dark. Just looking at his eyes, there was no way to tell what kind of mood he had at this moment. But, even if she couldn't see his peerless beauty, in full view. But, just staring at his eyes, looking at his smooth lines, smooth chin, and that, as if, tempting her to kiss his thin lips. It was also a delightful thing to see. Probably because Yi-Ching Luo's naked eyes stared a little too much. The man's long and narrow peach blossom eyes, slightly raised a little. He chuckled. Their lips were almost touching, and she could feel his breath. Yi-Ching Luo's cheeks turned slightly red. However, her expression was still as charming as before. What kind of deal? Tell me about it. Dmo Xian's eyes deepened and his voice was filled with ridicule. Seeing that the man had a reaction, Yi-Ching Luo moved her lips away and whispered into his ear, "Accompany me until the end of the ceremony." Accompany you? Dmo Xian's peach blossom eyes curved as the corners of his mouth curled up, becoming more and more playful. Yi-Ching Luo expressed that looking at a half-covered beauty at such a close distance was really a test of her self-control. There was a smile in her voice. Yes. What are the benefits? Dmo Xian didn't accept, but he didn't reject either. Asking like this meant that there was a chance. Yi-Ching Luo's eyes lit up slightly as her voice hooked out a tinge of coquettishness. After this ends, I'll be at your disposal, you can do whatever you want to me. Anything? Dmo Xian repeated these 4 words with a smile which didn't look like a smile. His eyes looked at her and suddenly lowered his voice. A little rascal, including, sleeping with you? Yi-Ching Luo was stunned. She didn't expect such a serious Dmo Xian to say such rascal words. Her charming eyes rose, meeting Dmo Xian's peach blossom eyes which were filled with ridicule. Chapter 2774. Looks like you really like me. Dmo Xian's voice was extremely light, without any extra emotions. Yi-Ching Luo expressed that this Dmo Xian looked like an abstinent male god. An inviolable look. She smiled with her eyes curved, seemingly very happy. Yes, I like you very much. The young lady didn't conceal her loving gaze. This made Dmo Xian's thin lips inexplicably pulled into an arc. But the next moment, there was another inexplicable emotion that began to disturb his heart. There was a voice in his mind. It kept telling him, push away the young lady. Stay away from the young lady. Gradually, it formed a very powerful thought. Kill the young lady. His brows tightened, feeling a little strange about this inexplicable emotion. Obviously, he was hugging the young lady. Flirting with the young lady. Under this kind of atmosphere, it was impossible to have the thought of killing the young lady. But this kind of thought really existed. His body had a strange feeling. Dmo Xian's peach blossom eyes flashed a trace of fluctuation. He once again fixed his gaze on Yi-Ching Luo. He wanted to find an answer from Yi-Ching Luo. The young lady was still smiling. A pair of sparkling eyes, as if bearing thousands of peach blossoms. Reflected in her eyes was only his shadow. For some reason, Dmo Xian had already abandoned the strange emotion in his heart. His thin lips moved, spitting out a word, "All right." As soon as he said that word, a cold light flashed in his eyes. The smile on the young lady's face became even more brilliant. Like a blooming poppy, releasing its most seductive power. Dmo Xian's mind moved. Suddenly his big palm covered the back of Yi-Ching Luo's head, lowered his head, and kissed her lips. This kiss was very affectionate. Gentle, as if water could be squeezed out. Yi-Ching Luo almost indulged in this kind of torturous kiss. But Dmo Xian only kissed familiarity, until his breath covered her layer after layer. He released her. Yi-Ching Luo's eyes were stained with a trace of crystal, because of his kiss. He let go. Yi-Ching Luo's thoughts were still empty, as she grabbed Dmo Xian's collar. Staring at Yi-Ching Luo, the man's eyes dimmed slightly, covered with a layer of desire. What a lovely little vixen. He really wanted to devour her bite by bite. However, the timing and location were both wrong. Thinking of the young girl's cunning, he smiled charmingly and said, including sleeping with me. Dmo Xian's expression darkened further. Forget it, since the girl wanted him to accompany her. He accompanied her. Perhaps, after obtaining her, they would feel that she was no different from other women. He wouldn't be affected by this woman anymore. Dmo Xian retracted his breath and tightened his arms, bringing her petite body into his embrace. His low and husky voice moved closer to her ear and laughed. This is the interest. After tasting it, it's not bad. I will reluctantly agree to your deal. Yiqing Luo was still in a daze. He couldn't help but sigh. Dmo Xian's honey trap really made her unable to stop herself. However, at least he had reached an agreement with him. As long as Dmo Xian sat with her properly, and finished participating in this Sainte ceremony, the rest of the matter would be discussed in private. Yiqing Luo hugged his waist and buried her head in his chest. The man didn't resist, nor did he have any intention to push her away. Yiqing Luo was assured, as she hugged Dmo Xian's waist, and walked towards their position. Chapter 2775. No matter if it was Yiqing Luo's real identity, or her real looks. Furthermore, the overlord was present at the scene, and even displayed affection with Yiqing Luo in public, breaking the rumors of abandonment. All kinds of things. All the guests who were watching were shocked. They recalled that they had previously spoken out to humiliate Yiqing Luo, belittling the imperial palace in front of the emissary of the Palace of Darkness and the vice palace master. Their hearts were in their throats. However, the two people who had disturbed everyone's mind did not seem to be affected at all. NN lovingly returned to his seat. He even acted as if there was no one else around, showing off his affection and feeding him food. Naturally it was Yiqing Luo who was feeding Dmo Xian. Peach, who was sitting by the side in a daze, looked at Yiqing Luo's smiling face, peeling grapes for Dmo Xian and feeding him. Her mouth twitched. After not wearing the mask, you can let go of yourself? Just now, when he saw the two of them, the atmosphere was clearly different. His Majesty's aura had also changed. The group of them thought that Lord Dizun was suffering from the effects of the centrifugal goo. He was about to flip out on the spot. He didn't expect to be stuffed with dog food instead. Overlord, he. Xiao Jin held Yan Xiao Yi, whose expression wasn't very good, as he looked at Dmo Xian worriedly. His centrifugal force goo, will it affect? No problem. Yiqing Luo placed the grape into Dmo Xian's mouth. The man sat on the cushion lazily. His feet were slightly bent. One hand rests on the knee. He looked lazy and noble to the extreme. When Yiqing Luo's grape was brought to his lips, he lazily opened his mouth. His thin lips brushed past Yiqing Luo's fingers faintly. Yiqing Luo's fingertips trembled, but she didn't say a word as she continued to peel the grape's skin while glancing sideways at Xiao Jin. The overlord has always been honest and trustworthy. He promised me that he will accompany me till the end of the grand ceremony, so he will stay till the end of the grand ceremony. Her words were directed at Xiao Jin. But in actual fact, it was for Dmo Xian to hear. As smart as Dizun was, how could he not understand the deeper meaning of the girl's words? He narrowed his long and narrow eyes. His thin lips curled up into an extremely shallow arc. When the girl gave him another grape, he opened his mouth and bit the girl's finger. A slight prickling pain made Yiqing Luo frown as she stared at him resentfully. Dmo Xian loosened his grip and casually shifted his gaze onto Yiqing Luo's face as he gave a casual smile. This lord is not an honest and trustworthy person. Everything depends on this lord's mood. Yiqing Luo, fine, you're the boss. Couldn't she spoil him to death? Yiqing Luo took a deep breath and smiled. Yes, I will definitely serve the overlord well, so that the overlord can maintain his mood. Her voice was dry and stiff. Even when he smiled, it felt like a fake smile. Xiao Jin and the others couldn't help but shiver when they heard the word concubine, rubbing their arms. However, a certain man was in a good mood and nodded with satisfaction. Yi Qing Luo. After his goo worm was cured, he would definitely kneel on the washboard. Yi Qing Luo suppressed the surging emotions in her heart and was about to take the grapes to serve this Buddha properly. Her peripheral vision suddenly caught a glimpse of something. Her slender brows creased as she immediately drew out her handkerchief and wiped off the grape juice on her fingers. Chapter 2776. Dmo Xian raised his brows, puzzled by Yi Qing Luo's actions. Was she not going to serve him anymore? Yi Qing Luo didn't look at him as she lifted her feet and walked towards a certain direction. Dmo Xian narrowed his peach blossom eyes as he slowly propped himself up. That was where Miao Yi was. At this moment, Miao Yi was standing beside the corpses of the Palace of Darkness guards, calmly commanding the Miao guards to carry the corpses. Second Elder Miao and Fourth Elder Miao stood beside her, their brows tightly furrowed as they spoke to Miao Yi. His emotions seemed to be somewhat agitated. From time to time, Miao Yi would glance sideways and respond to the two elders. Meanwhile, the two elders' faces turned uglier and uglier. He seemed to be arguing with Miao Yi about something. Yi Qing Luo also saw this scene, hence she immediately rushed over. Looking at Second Elder Miao's fawning attitude towards the Palace of Darkness just now. Later on, the Vice Palace Master of Gloomy Palace appeared. Second Elder Miao's heart was probably biased towards the Dark Nether Palace. He might even vent his anger on Miao Yi because of this. Although Miao Yi looked very calm and collected at the moment, and her way of doing things also had her own style. However, Miao Yi was only a 14 or 15-year-old girl after all. Before returning to the Miao tribe, she was still that simple-minded girl who would occasionally reveal a hint of cuteness. Miao Yi had undergone such an earth-shattering change in just a month. Thinking about it, Miao Yi must have had a very hard time in the Miao tribe this month, but Yi Qing Luo didn't intend to care about Miao Yi's hard work for this 1 month. After all, this was the path that Miao Yi had chosen. Become the Miao tribe leader, become the Miao tribe's holy maiden. The pressure on Miao Yi would be even greater than now. The days ahead would only be more difficult than now. These were things that Miao Yi had to bear. Before he even got close to the corpse of the Palace of Darkness guard, Second Elder Miao's angry voice rang out, "Miao Yi. Since you want to be the leader of the Miao tribe and become the saintess, shouldn't you prioritize the interests of the Miao tribe?" Fourth Elder Miao also tried his best to persuade her. That's right, Miss Miao. You are the only direct descendant of the Miao tribe. Everything in the Miao tribe will belong to you. For the sake of the Miao tribe, it's just a small matter to her. However, this will be of great help to the Miao tribe. No. Miao Yi spat out the word without hesitation. Her face was cold and gloomy. He was probably annoyed by the two elders' harassment. After saying this, she turned around and was about to return to the waiting room for the selection of the Holy Maiden. Second Elder Miao immediately chased after her. Miao Yi, what do you want? Whatever conditions you have, just state them. I don't want anything. Miao Yi halted her footsteps as she decisively rejected, Second Elder Miao, I won't open my mouth to Qing Luo. She's my friend, not a tool to be used. Isn't it normal for friends to help each other? Second Elder Miao was still unwilling to give up. Miao Yi could not be bothered to say anything more to Second Elder Miao. Suddenly, he heard a sweet voice with a smile, What are you talking to me about? Miao Yi was stunned as her gaze turned towards the direction of the voice. She saw that young lady who was clad in raging flames looking at her with a light smile. Miao Yi's heart quivered slightly. Chapter 2777. Oh. Yi Qing Luo's brows rose as she had some guesses in her heart, but she still asked, My matter? What matter? Second Elder Miao's attitude made Yi Qing Luo smile, add a tinge of ridicule. These years, status, and ability were indeed the most important. Originally she thought that second elder Meow would because of the appearance of the secluded palace's second palace lord. Placing all the bets on secluded palace. She had not expected, second elder Meow was leaning towards her. After knowing her real identity. Trying to get closer to her through Meow Yi? As expected, after hearing Yi Qing Luo's words, second elder Meow gave a flattering smile. Miss Yi and eldest young Miss Meow have a close relationship, so it's most suitable for eldest young Miss Meow to say it. Saying that, he stretched out his hand and pulled Meow Yi's arm, pushing her in front of Yi Qing Luo. Eldest young Miss, why are you still standing here? Didn't you have something to say to Miss Yi earlier? Meow Yi's willowy brows creased tightly as she impatiently shook off second elder Meow's hand. Meow Yi. Second elder Meow warned her in a low voice as he took a careful look at Yi Qing Luo and immediately smiled. Perhaps my tone earlier was a little too heavy and made eldest young Miss unhappy. I'll leave first, Miss Yi and eldest young Miss Meow, you guys continue chatting. Saying that, he nudged fourth elder Meow who was standing by the side. The two of them prepared to leave. What's the matter? Yi Qing Luo looked at Meow Yi's steely green face as she laughed lightly. Between us, what else can't be said? The two elders who were leaving instantly pricked up their ears as they simultaneously slowed down their footsteps. Meow Yi pursed her lips as her expression sunk as she opened her mouth. Sorry. Why are you apologizing? Yi Qing Luo smiled gently. Meow Yi was stunned as she raised her eyes and stared blankly at Yi Qing Luo's alluring exquisite face. Ever since Yi Qing Luo brought her back to the secret room in the Peach Blossom restaurant, Yi Qing Luo had never intentionally concealed her own identity in front of her. From the beginning in the Peach Blossom restaurant's secret room, Meow Yi already knew Yi Luo's real identity. The one who was hailed as the little hero of the West Continent, the one who saved countless of students, the female version of the miracle, Yi Qing Luo. She had heard of Yi Qing Luo's name. He had also envied Yi Qing Luo's ability. There was a time when he had fantasized about it. If only he had half of Yi Qing Luo's boldness and determination. She would not have to leave the Meow tribe, the place that belonged to her. Meow Yi knew of Yi Qing Luo's identity, but she had never asked about it, nor was she curious about it. She knew that Yi Qing Luo treated her as a friend. That was enough. If not for Yi Qing Luo, she would still be wandering outside, unable to return to the place where she belonged. Meow Yi's eyes were a little dazed. His eyes gradually turned red. After a long while, her long eyelashes trembled and she said in a nasal voice, "It's nothing. I just wanted to tell you that I will do my best in this Saintess selection." Yi Qing Luo smiled as she raised her hand and rubbed Meow Yi's furry little head. "Amen, all the best, I believe in you." Meow Yi's eyes reddened even more as she felt the warmth of a big sister's palm. Since she was young, she had never enjoyed the so-called familial love. The so-called elder sister had never given her any warmth. Today, from Yi Qing Luo's body, she could feel this warmth. Chapter 2778. She closed her cheek, feeling the warm touch. A smile gradually appeared in Meow Yi's eyes. She revealed a smile as she looked at Yi Qing Luo and nodded her head vigorously. Not far away, the two elders who were standing among the Meow tribe guards who were continuously carrying the guards of the Palace of Darkness away saw this scene. They looked at each other and smiled in satisfaction. However, in the next instant, but she saw Meow Yi and Yi Qing Luo saying goodbye and turning around to leave. Second elder Meow's face darkened. He quickly walked over and stopped Meow Yi. "Did you say what you wanted to say? Get out of my way." Meow Yi frowned and tried to pass second elder Meow. However, second elder Meow moved to block Meow Yi and asked again, "Have you said what I asked you to say to Miss Yi?" "No." Meow Yi's voice was very calm, and her emotions did not fluctuate. "Can you move aside now? I still have to prepare for the upcoming Saintess selection." Meow Yi. Second elder Meow was infuriated by her attitude and tightened his grip on Meow Yi's slender wrist. "This is all for the good of the Meow tribe. Since you're so close to her, how could she not help you with just a few words? Meow Yi was getting impatient. The anger in second elder Meow's heart grew. He was about to speak. Behind him, Yi Qing Luo's cold voice floated over. Second elder Meow, what's going on? Is the dignified young mistress of the Meow tribe someone that a mere elder like you can drag around? Meanwhile, a dark force hurricane struck. It brushed past second elder Meow's hand, which was holding Meow Yi's hand. Second elder Meow let go of Meow Yi in pain. He raised his hand and saw that the back of his hand was already covered in blood. Just a slight movement of his finger would cause the wound that had been swept by the hurricane to reopen, and the pain was excruciating. However, second elder Meow did not dare to show a dark expression. He endured the pain coming from the back of his hand and smiled, nodding repeatedly. Miss Yi is right. I have overstepped my boundaries. Yi Qing Luo raised her brows slightly as she slowly walked over. She placed a hand on Meow Yi's shoulder lazily. He leaned against Meow Yi. Their posture was intimate and natural. She tilted her head and smiled wickedly. Just now, second elder Meow even said that his tone towards Yi was a little harsh and made Yi unhappy. I'm very curious, in this Meow tribe, just how much authority does an elder have? Second elder Meow's body stiffened and his face paled. This. Miss Yi has misunderstood. Misunderstanding? Yi Qing Luo's tone rose as her long and narrow eyes squinted. Yi is the Meow clan leader's only direct bloodline, and is the future Meow clan leader. Furthermore, she is currently a candidate for the Holy Maiden of the Meow tribe. She has the protection of the Holy Maiden. How dare you, an elder of the Meow tribe, disrespect Yi? She paused for a moment before her tone suddenly became more serious. You're tugging at Yi, and your attitude is terrible. I can't help but think deeper. Could it be that second elder Meow is trying to take away Yi's authority and replace her? Second elder Meow's face instantly turned pale. He hurriedly shook his head and anxiously explained, I didn't. I've been in the Meow tribe for decades, how could I have such thoughts? Miss Yi, please don't misunderstand. Misunderstanding? Yi Qing Luo's smile deepened as her charming eyes deepened. No one could tell the real meaning behind her smile. Obviously, it was a devastatingly beautiful smile. Obviously, it was a pair of alluring eyes that made one's heart flutter. But, second elder Meow was being stared at by this pair of alluring eyes. When this smile was reflected in his eyes, he felt a chill run down his spine. Chapter 2779. Second elder Meow felt a chill run down his spine. Wrinkles spread across his pale face. His body trembled and his voice trembled. It's my fault, I've broken the Meow tribe's rules. Yi Qing Luo's fingertip tapped on Meow Yi's shoulder as she opened her mouth lazily. Future clan leader, how do you think we should punish those who break the Meow tribe's regulations? Meow Yi was stunned, not expecting Yi Qing Luo to shift the topic to her. But when he met Yi Qing Luo's smiling eyes, Meow Yi suddenly understood. Yi Qing Luo was helping her to stabilize her position in the Meow tribe. Meow Yi's heart felt warm. This was the first time someone stood in her shoes and considered everything for her. So, Yi Qing Luo knew right from the start. Why were second elder Meow and fourth elder Meow pestering her? Second elder Meow's request was actually very simple. She only hoped that she could make use of the friendship between her and Yi Qing Luo. Let Yi Qing Luo step forward to show the guests that she would stand on the Meow tribe's side, becoming their backing. Because Yi Qing Luo not only represented Yi Qing Luo. There was also the overlord and the power of the imperial palace. As long as Yi Qing Luo agreed. This was very beneficial to the future development of the Meow tribe. At least, those who wanted to take advantage of the Meow tribe's current situation to attack them and invade their territory would give up on that idea. However, Meow Yi didn't want that to happen. Yi Qing Luo had helped her enough. Yi Qing Luo indeed treated her extremely well, treating her like a younger sister. But she couldn't be insatiable just because Yi Qing Luo treated her well. Moreover, it had always been Yi Qing Luo who had been sacrificing for her. As for her, she had never done anything for Yi Qing Luo. How could she possibly make use of their friendship to make Yi Qing Luo open her mouth? The minute Yi Qing Luo announced in public, she would become the backing of the Miao tribe. It meant that in the future, he would be involved with the Miao tribe. Miao Yi wasn't willing to push her own burden onto Yi Qing Luo. Because of this, Miao Yi had always refused. But now, Yi Qing Luo used her own way to express her attitude. It wasn't a big publicity. Instead, he used his actions to show it. Yi Qing Luo was teaching her to punish the chicken to warn the monkey, stabilizing his position in the Miao tribe. It was also a good opportunity to show that she, Miao Yi, was not someone to be trifled with. On Miao Yi's face, the first time she met Yi Qing Luo surfaced, that radiant and innocent smile. Yi Qing Luo had already helped her to such an extent. Then, she would have to walk on her own, one step at a time. Miao Yi's eyes firmly looked at Yi Qing Luo. Soon after, the smile on his face slowly disappeared. "I'm afraid Second Elder has been in a high position for far too long," Miao Yi said, her voice icy cold. "You no longer consider yourself to be Second Elder." Second Elder Miao shuddered and knelt in front of Miao Yi with a thud. When Fourth Elder Miao saw this, he immediately knelt down. Miao Yi's expression was calm, without a hint of panic. She looked down at Second Elder Miao and continued, "Nothing can be accomplished without rules. Second Elder Miao should know the Miao tribe's rules better than anyone else. This person who broke the Miao tribe's rules, how to deal with him. Second Elder Miao should be clearer than anyone else. Young miss, spare me, spare me." Chapter 2780. According to the rules, Second Elder Miao offended her superiors and had the intention to replace me. She should be directly stripped of her status as an elder, and sent to the Gu garden to be reduced to a Gu slave. Miao Yi enunciated each and every word in a calm tone. When he heard the words, Gu slave, Second Elder Miao's face was ashen. Gu garden, that was the place where Miao tribe's Gu worms were abundant. As for Gu slaves, it wasn't just to raise those Gu worms. Moreover, every time a new Gu worm was researched, the Gu slave would become the test subject of the Gu worm. If they were lucky, they could survive, and because of the new Gu worm, they could develop the latent energy in their bodies. If he was unlucky, he would be devoured by the new Gu worm. That was the place that all the Miao tribe members feared the most. He looked at Second Elder Miao and Fourth Elder Miao's pale faces. Yi Qing Luo laughed softly. She tilted her head and leaned against Miao Yi's shoulder. Her voice was extremely lazy. "This punishment is not bad." Miao Yi smiled as well. Her confidence grew as well. She was about to continue speaking. However, the slender and soft fingers on his shoulder suddenly knocked gently. Miao Yi was stunned as she realized that Yi Qing Luo had something to tell her. She glanced sideways. Yi Qing Luo didn't say anything, only smiling faintly. There seemed to be some sort of emotion hidden in those deep and beautiful eyes. Miao Yi's eyes narrowed. Suddenly, he seemed to have understood something. She shifted her gaze again, and when she looked at Second Elder Miao, the flames on her body had already gradually calmed down. She lowered her eyes and looked at the elder kneeling in front of her, but Miao Yi purposely dragged out her last syllable. These two words seemed to give Second Elder Miao hope. He suddenly raised his head and looked at Miao Yi. However, Second Elder Miao is an elder of the Miao tribe after all. You have worked diligently for the Miao tribe for decades. The corners of Miao Yi's mouth curled into a faint smile. Seeing that Second Elder Miao has a good attitude in admitting his mistake, I can pretend that your rudeness towards me did not happen. But, if there is a next time, there will be no next time. There would be no next time. There will be no next time. Second Elder Miao's anxious and uneasy heart felt much more at ease the moment he heard Miao Yi's tone. With a pale face, he repeatedly promised that he wouldn't dare to do it again. Miao Yi widened her smile in satisfaction. At this moment, the finger on Miao Yi's shoulder moved again. Shortly after, the soft and delicate body that was attached to Miao Yi's body slowly pulled away. This time, Miao Yi understood without the slightest bit of hesitation. She took the initiative to help the two elders up and said, "Elders, please don't kneel. In the future, the Miao tribe will still need the help of the two of you." A slap in the face, and then a carrot. This was the message that Yi Qing Luo transmitted to her. Yi Qing Luo was extremely satisfied with Miao Yi's way of doing things. She raised her hand and stroked Miao Yi's head again. The dignified look on Miao Yi's face immediately faded away as she resumed a young lady's radiant smile. She raised her head and looked at Yi Qing Luo. "Qing Luo, thank you. All right, hurry up and prepare. We've been delayed by the secluded palace for such a long time. If we drag on any longer, the sky will turn dark." Yi Qing Luo placed both her hands on Miao Yi's shoulder, pushing her towards the direction of the Miao tribe's inner region. Chapter 2781. Miao Main Building. In the long corridor on the second floor, stood two figures. This position coincidentally allowed them to have a panoramic view of the entire plaza. Standing slightly in front was a lady dressed in simple Miao Miao clothing. Her facial features were exquisite and gentle like water. There were some wrinkles at the corner of her eyes and she looked to be around 30 years old. The lady's gaze followed Miao Yi closely until Miao Yi's figure disappeared around the corner before she retracted her gaze. The lady's delicate brows creased. "Eldest young Miss Miao's change is really huge." Behind the lady was an elderly dressed in a white long robe. He had white brows, white hair and a white beard. His figure was slightly plump and he looked very benevolent. The elderly stroked his white beard. "This is all because of that young lady named Yi Qing Luo who changed eldest young Miss Miao." He paused for a moment as his white brows curved, filled with smiles. "Eldest young Miss Miao being able to grow up is a good thing for the Miao tribe." The lady remained silent for a moment as she nodded her head faintly. Soon after, his gaze was fixed on the extremely dazzling young girl with a face that could topple cities. After some time, her red lips moved slightly as she spoke softly. "Let's go, the sacred maiden selection is about to begin. We should go meet this lady who can change eldest young Miss Miao. Let's see how much magical power she has." Miao Tribe Plaza. Yi Qing Luo sent Miao Yi off with her eyes. She then took small steps back to Dmo Xian's side. She had just gotten close when she sensed that there was a kind of frosty cold air flowing in the air. Yi Qing Luo's footsteps paused as she looked at Dmo Xian, who was still maintaining his original sitting posture. That half mask which she personally made had concealed the emotions on his face. But Yi Qing Luo acutely sensed the chilliness emitting from Dmo Xian's body. He was in a bad mood? Who was it who had offended this great Buddha? Yi Qing Luo looked suspiciously at the few people beside Dmo Xian. The few people who had been sitting next to her before she left her seat had now all obediently moved away from her and moved to the side. On the left and right, there was at least a space of 3 seats. Only the overlord was left as he bent his knees on the soft cushion, displaying his elegance. Peach and Xiao Jin, who came into contact with Yi Qing Luo's puzzled gaze, spread out their hands as they shrugged their shoulders in confusion. Just as Yi Qing Luo and Peach's eyes met, transmitting the message. Suddenly, the man's cold and deep voice came into her ears. "Why are you still standing there?" Yi Qing Luo shivered in fright from this voice. Her fingers unconsciously curled up a little. Earlier when he was in front of Miao Yi, whatever overbearing aura, indolent enchanting, in front of Dmo Xian, had all disappeared. She laughed dryly as she moved her feet and returned to Dmo Xian's side to sit down. Not waiting for Dmo Xian to speak. She had already spontaneously put her head into Dmo Xian's arms. The man's aura was very cold. But his embrace was still very warm. "What? Now that you know you're in the wrong, you're here to please me? The man lowered his eyes and asked with a sneer. Yiqing Luo arched her head, the man's sandalwood scent lingered around her nose. She stretched out her arms and hugged his waist. In his arms, she raised her little head and smiled like a cat who had successfully stolen food. Wrong? Fawn? I'm the one who made the overlord unhappy. Dmo Xian's pupils contracted slightly. Not knowing why, when he saw the young lady's satisfied smile. His heart had a long-lost warmth. Chapter 2782. The young lady didn't know Dmo Xian's emotions were in turmoil. Her brows were still curved as she smiled sweetly and her voice was soft as though water could be squeezed out. I wonder what I did to make the overlord angry? Dmo Xian's eyes were slightly gloomy as he stared at her quietly, as though he wanted to stare into her soul. Yiqing Luo smiled even more wantonly. Her hands were also on Dmo Xian's waist, moving up and down, constantly taking advantage of him. There was no sign of her admitting her mistake and trying to please him. Yiqing Luo. Suddenly, Dmo Xian's large palm clasped onto the little hand that was caressing his waist. His pupils were deep. In public, if you don't want to put on a show, then let go. Yiqing Luo's hand paused as the complacent expression on her face disappeared. Damn it. While Dmo Xian was poisoned by the centrifugal venom, he definitely wouldn't have that kind of reaction towards her. Touching him all over, touching all the muscles that she didn't dare to touch previously. Because, if it was in the past, she simply wanted to touch Dmo Xian's firm muscles, to feel what it felt like. In the end, there were only two possibilities. It was very likely that not only did she not touch his muscles, she would also be eaten clean without any residue left. Or perhaps, on one hand, she was eaten clean and on the other hand, she was forced to touch his muscles until she was afraid to see his muscles. No matter what the outcome was. Yiqing Luo expressed that she didn't want to experience it. So, she specially touched him now. Even if Dmo Xian forgot about her and left her heart. But he was after all a man. She couldn't play happily anymore. Yiqing Luo retracted her hand resentfully, but her mouth was still very thick-skinned. I am trying to please the overlord and admit my mistake. So, Miss Ye's way of admitting your mistake is to sleep with me? Dmo Xian raised his brows as his voice faintly revealed a chill. Yiqing Luo inexplicably felt a little cold. Even when she was leaning against Dmo Xian's arms. That chill was constantly surging into his skin. Yiqing Luo's pupils were slightly stunned as she quickly reacted and laughed. She suppressed the lingering cold air around her and her hands were not afraid of death as she hugged Dmo Xian's waist once again. Moreover, it was extremely bold. She reached into his wide silver robe and wrapped her arms around his sturdy waist. Her little face was pressed against his chest. Glancing at Dmo Xian with a faint smile, she gazed at his face. Io, the only person who can make me admit my mistake and coax, is only you, the overlord. The only person I want to sleep with, is only you, the overlord. When she said this, she even deliberately used that extremely coquettish Taiwanese accent. She could be said to be an expert at acting spoiled. Dmo Xian's thin lips were slightly pursed, his gaze deep as he gazed deeply at her face. He did not say a word and his expression was indifferent. This reaction made Yiqing Luo not know what to do. Could it be that Dmo Xian wasn't jealous? Was he unhappy with the way she apologized and tried to please him? She had made her feelings very clear. What was he still upset about? Yiqing Luo expressed, a man's heart was even more difficult to fathom than a needle at the bottom of the sea. Stop crying. Lord Dizun is angry. How can I coax him? It was quite urgent. Yiqing Luo was still racking her brains, thinking of ways to coax her man. Suddenly, a man wearing a mask appeared in her eyes. The man's face was half revealed, and his elegant face was reflected in her eyes. Yiqing Luo was stunned and just wanted to open her mouth. Her lips were forcefully sealed by the man. Chapter 2783. What was going on? Wasn't he angry? Why did he suddenly kiss her? Yiqing Luo's mind was in a mess. She couldn't resist the temptation from Dmo Xian. Very quickly, Yiqing Luo was thrown into disarray. Until she was released, she was lying in Dmo Xian's arms. Her ear was stuck tightly to his heart. Her heart was beating very fast, her mind was filled with the thump-thump-thump sound. But, where her ear was stuck, the heartbeat was extremely calm, without any ripples or waves. As though the kiss earlier was just a casual action, unable to stir up any waves in his heart. Yiqing Luo's thumping heart, at this moment, stopped beating. Her emotions disappeared very quickly. The lady's shyness also disappeared very quickly. This change naturally did not escape Dmo Xian's eyes. The brows under the mask slightly thickened, Dmo Xian's eyes sunk, his voice was still very cold. Why? Tired of this lord's kiss? The world's peerless beauty, only the overlord, how could I be tired of the overlord's kiss? Yiqing Luo's delicate body pulled a distance away from Dmo Xian. She half propped up, only her upper body, leaning into Dmo Xian's arms. 3,000 black hair pouring down. It looked extremely lazy. She raised her head, for eyes, and Dmo Xian, level, looked at each other. The overlord took the initiative to kiss me, does it mean you have forgiven me? She raised one arm. The wide robe slid down to the wrist. Half of the skin, as white as jade, was revealed, revealing half of the skin, the fair as jade arm. Her hand circled around Dmo Xian's neck, and immediately her delicate body came closer to his arms. The distance between the two of them narrowed again. Almost, it was nose, aimed at nose. But, this kind of closeness made Dmo Xian's brows creased even tighter. His eyes dimmed. Although the young lady in front was close to him. But the smile on the young lady's face was obviously too fake. It was just like the mask she wore when she was in front of others. To him, it was no different to others. This kind of thinking made Dmo Xian's heart sink. Obviously, just now, she was still in his arms, soft as water. The more Dmo Xian thought, the more vexed he felt. Such emotions overflowed. It was impossible for Yiqing Luo not to feel it. But Yiqing Luo had no intention to open her mouth. She knew that when Dmo Xian kissed her, other than the man's most direct reaction, he did not have any feelings of love towards her. That was because of the centrifugal force goo in his body. But, even if he knew, while she was being kissed passionately, but he didn't have the slightest reaction. She still felt rather sad. After the selection of the saintess, she must let Yi cure Dmo Xian's poison as soon as possible. You're angry. The man's deep voice floated over. His long arms suddenly reached out and wrapped around her slender waist. Yiqing Luo's half-propped-up body suddenly pounced forward. She fell into his firm embrace. The man's scorching breath hit her in the face. Since you like my kiss, why are you still angry after being kissed? He bent down and touched his nose to hers. Their lips were separated by less than a finger. But he did not kiss her. A pair of sparkling peach blossom eyes stared deeply into her eyes. Chapter 2784. Dmo Xian knew that the young lady's words were just to brush him off. The girl didn't want to tell him the reason why she was angry. He didn't pursue the matter any further. After all, he was only slightly interested in this young lady. The girl didn't want to talk about it. He was too lazy to ask any further. Dmo Xian did not ask. Yiqing Luo couldn't be bothered to say any more. The eyes of the surrounding guests all fell on the two of them. He saw that sweetness between the two of them. He had to admit it. The man was handsome and the woman was beautiful. When they were put together, no matter what they did, it was so pleasing to the eye. Even though it was a public kiss in the eyes of the crowd, they still couldn't bear to spoil it, because it was such a beautiful scene. This was a society that only cared about appearances. He was good-looking. Most of the time, they were easily forgiven. After this episode, the Holy Maiden selection of the Meow tribe had finally begun. Second Elder Meow and Fourth Elder Meow's attitude towards Meow-E had obviously changed after the beating just now. It was not just these two elders. It was the same for the rest of the Meow tribe. After all, Yi-Ching Luo's attitude towards Meow-E earlier. Although he didn't say anything. But anyone could tell that Yi-Ching Luo was supporting Meow-E. Yi-Ching Luo's backing represented the Overlord's backing. What's more, Yi-Ching Luo was the little hero of the West Continent, the elder sister of the current patriarch of the Three Springs sect. He was also the benefactor of many academies. Various identities, all indicated that Yi-Ching Luo was a master who could not be offended. He wanted to please Yi-Ching Luo. Naturally, they had to start from the people around Yi-Ching Luo. Because of this, Meow-E was not obstructed by anyone during the selection process of the Meow tribe. Including Meow-E, there were a total of 8 women participating in the selection. The oldest was 17 years old. The youngest was 11 years old. They were all women of the Meow tribe who were extremely talented in Gu techniques. Before the Saintess selection began, Yi-Ching Luo specially spoke out and said a sentence: "The greatest respect towards the opponent is to go all out. So, there's no need to worry about Meow-E's status. Just compete however you want." Yi-Ching Luo had already said this sentence. How could the other Saintess candidates dare to go easy on him? If he went easy, it would be disrespectful to Meow-E. Disrespecting Meow-E was equivalent to disrespecting Yi-Ching Luo. Disrespecting Yi-Ching Luo was disrespecting the Overlord. This complicated relationship was involved. Who could bear the consequences? Yi-Ching Luo's words were beneficial to Meow-E. Meow-E was able to subdue the ancient Gu King, so her strength was obvious. She didn't need her opponent to go easy on her. Moreover, if Meow-E really became the Meow tribe's holy maiden, Meow-E Xiong and Meow Rongrong's henchmen might make a big fuss about it. For example, Meow-E could become the holy maiden of the Meow tribe. He merely relied on Yi-Ching Luo's help. As for the other sacred maiden candidates, they were afraid of offending Yi-Ching Luo and intentionally lost to Meow-E. Even if Meow-E relied on her own strength, no one would believe it. He would also be accused of being unjustifiable. Whereas Yi-Ching Luo had already made things clear before the selection. This would also indirectly block the schemes of Meow-E Xiong and Meow Rongrong's henchmen. The truth had proven that Yi-Ching Luo's guess was not wrong. Meow-E's strength had far exceeded her expectations. The reason why the Meow tribe could survive to this day was because of the Meow tribe's poison. Chapter 2785. Towards Gu worms, Meow-E, who had contracted the king of venomous worms, was naturally not unfamiliar with them. No matter if it was the first round of distinguishing Gu worms, or the second round of analyzing the Gu worm's nurturing and the method to neutralize it, or the third round of intimate contact with Gu worms, Meow-E had done extremely well. Her performance could be described as eye-catching and breathtaking. Even the elders who were originally extremely anxious couldn't help but stood up and clapped their hands. One must know how much pressure they were under just to sit here as the judges. Everyone knew that Meow-E had been left outside by the previous clan leader since young. Unlike Meow Rongrong, who was the future sacred maiden whom the previous clan leader had meticulously nurtured. Plus Meow Rongrong's enmity towards Meow-E. Meow-E had been in Meow Meow for the past 10 over years, so she had no way to come into contact with anything related to Gu worms. Later on, Meow-E left Meow Meow tribe. Now, Meow-E had just returned to Meow Meow tribe for a month. even though Miao Yi had been trying her best to absorb the knowledge related to goo worms in this 1 month. But it was impossible for her to pass the Sacred Maiden selection safely in a short period of 1 month. The elders judging were afraid that Miao Yi would not be able to pass the test. Coupled with Yi Qing Luo's early warning, the other candidates didn't dare to go easy on Miao Yi, causing Miao Yi to fail and leave the competition, thus offending Yi Qing Luo. Their hearts had always been restless. Until Miao Yi's breathtaking performance. They finally put their hearts at ease. Miao Yi's performance. The other candidates didn't need to go easy at all. Miao Yi was able to pass the test easily and safely. While they were stunned, they were also curious. What method did Miao Yi use to be able to understand everything related to goo worms clearly in 1 month's time? After 3 rounds of selection. 8 candidates, there were only 3 left. Miao Yi's performance was without a doubt the best. By this time, the sky had already turned dark. The elder judging looked at the pitch-black sky and was about to say something. Suddenly, a female attendant walked up with a letter and passed it to the elder judging. After the elder judging saw the contents of the letter, his expression changed slightly as his gaze subconsciously shot towards the Miao tribe main building's long corridor. But there wasn't a single figure there. The judging elder shifted his gaze to Miao Yi. After hesitating for a moment, under everyone's gaze, he said word by word, "The last stage of the Saintess selection is tonight. Tomorrow, you will have to raise a goo insect." He paused for a moment before continuing. According to the quality of the goo worms raised, the candidates who can enter the Saintess realm and accept the ancient goo worms examination will be determined. When the judging elder announced the rules of the 4th round, everyone burst into an uproar. Especially the people of the Miao tribe, they were all stunned. Everyone knew, a good quality goo worm needed time to nurture. Tonight, or tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Which meant that from now until 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, in such a short period of time, he managed to raise a good quality goo worm. Was this a joke? After reading the rules of the last round, the judging elder's expression was a little strange. The judging elder nudged him. Since when was there a rule for the 4th round? That judging elder's face was pale as he shook his head at him. Shortly after, he passed the letter in his hand over. After the curious judging elder saw the handwriting on the letter, he revealed the same expression as him. The Miao tribe members looked at each other. Chapter 2786. The remaining 2 Saintess candidates had been raised as future Saintesses since they were young. Since birth, they had been immersed in goo worms and goo skills. Even they had no way to nurture a goo worm of good quality in just a few hours. Looking at the past Sacred Maiden selections, Miao tribe had never had such a weird rule. Why was it only this time? But there was an additional difficult round? The 2 Sacred Maiden candidates looked at each other in dismay. The expressions on their faces were dark and extremely ugly. Miao tribe's women all wanted to become the Sacred Maiden. They naturally wanted it too. Although Miao Yi was the direct descendant of Miao tribe leader, and she had Yi Qing Luo and the overlord behind her. But didn't Yi Qing Luo say it earlier? Everything depended on ability. In their hearts, there was still a little bit of hope. As long as they used their own ability to surpass Miao Yi and become the Miao tribe's Sacred Maiden. Even if Yi Qing Luo was finding trouble for Miao Yi, she would definitely be drowned by the rumors and slanders. Not only would she throw away her own face, the overlord's reputation would also be tarnished. After all, there were so many guests present and they were all witnesses. But all the luck, after the judging elder announced the additional rounds rule, was completely shattered. Just at this moment, at the guest seating area, a rough man's voice was heard from the back. "I told you, there's something wrong with this Miao Yi." Looks like, the judging elder also saw that there's something wrong with Miao Yi, so he set up this 4th round of selection. "Brother Yang is right," someone echoed, and his voice was loud and clear, as though he couldn't wait for everyone in the public square to hear his words. Who in the entire Miao tribe doesn't know Miao Yi's ability? She had never come into contact with any goo skills or goo worms, so how could she possibly answer those questions? The second round's goo worm rearing method and antidote method, even us Miao clansmen don't know about it. She is someone who had never come into contact with goo worms, but not only did she answered it so professionally. As though she had reared those goo worms and antidote those goo worms. From what I see, some people, in order to let Miao Yi become the sacred maiden, got all the sacred maiden selection questions and made Miao Yi memorize them all. After this sentence was uttered, a storm was set off in the entire square. The more the Miao tribesmen thought about it, the more they felt that this person's words made sense. Everyone knew that Miao Yi's situation in the Miao tribe was at most a little better than a goo slave. Miao Rongrong didn't want to give Miao Yi any chance to come into contact with the goo worms. So, Miao Yi's performance in the Saintess selection was stunning. The reason was, he knew the topic of the Saintess selection in advance. That made sense. That person who got the question, everyone instinctively shifted their gazes onto Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian once again. Apart from these two people, they couldn't think of anyone else who could get the Miao tribe's holy maiden selection. It seemed like what these people had said was true. The judging elders found out that Miao Yi had cheated. But due to the presence of Yiqing Luo and the overlord, they didn't dare to expose him on the spot, so they stayed at the fourth round to maintain the Miao tribe's fairness. If that was the case, everything would make sense. Chapter 2787. On the stage, the faces of the two Saintess candidates who stood side by side with Miao Yi immediately darkened after hearing the crowd's discussion. They looked at each other, then at Miao Yi. On the young and beautiful face, her eyebrows were tightly furrowed. It was obvious that she was unhappy. So the judges added an extra round of selection because you cheated. Miao Zhilian, a candidate who was about 14 years old, gritted her teeth in anger. The Saintess, Miao Shuadan, who was about 17 years old and looked rather mature, pulled Miao Zhilian's sleeve, signaling her to stop talking. Miao Zhilian was still angry, but she knew that she could not vent her anger on Miao Yi. He and Miao Shuadan stood to the side. He distanced himself from Miao Yi. Miao Yi stood there alone. Her slender figure was very frail. She did not move. She didn't move at all when the guests were talking and pointing at her. Even the expression on his face did not change much. Below the selection stage, Yiqing Luo's brows creased tightly. Even though Miao Yi hid it well. But Yiqing Luo could still see the fluster in the depths of her eyes. After all, Miao Yi had never encountered such a thing before. No matter how early he matured. Be sensible at a young age. She was only a little girl less than 15 years old. Facing everyone's suspicions and distrust. No matter how she tried to explain, it would seem so weak and powerless. No one would believe it. Yiqing Luo's gaze swept past the few rows at the back, where they were still leading the rhythm, discussing incessantly. Those are Miao Rongrong's henchmen. Peach explained, Miao Rongrong has fallen from power, and Miao Yixiong has been stripped of his position as clan leader. If Yi takes over, they will be the first to be eradicated. Yiqing Luo nodded in understanding. The Miao tribe did not allow their tribesmen to leave the tribe without permission. If these people escaped from the Miao tribe, they would also be hunted down by the Miao tribe. Therefore, Miao Rongrong's henchmen wanted to survive. He could only think of ways to stop Miao Yi from becoming the holy maiden of the Miao tribe. As long as Miao Yi fell, they would then bring out a new Miao tribe leader or Saintess. They still had a chance to survive. Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes as a chilly glint flashed past her eyes. She had yet to speak. Miao Rongrong's henchmen were the first to find trouble. Because Miao Rongrong's henchmen, while setting the tempo, had been paying attention to Yiqing Luo's reaction. He caught a glimpse of Yiqing Luo's gaze. His eyes were hazy, causing people to shudder. The man's rough voice rang out loud and clear, Lady Yi, am I not speaking the truth? Why are you looking at us like that? Are you trying to silence me? Someone at the side immediately followed up. Kill them to silence them? Everyone present knew that Miao Yi had cheated. Are you going to kill all of us? Miss Yi, Miao Yi's cheating has something to do with you. Our Miao tribe's holy maiden selection is such a sacred matter. But you used such a method to disturb the sanctity of my Miao tribe. What exactly are you thinking? Very quickly, Miao Rongrong's henchman pointed all the spearheads towards Yi Qing Luo. It was just a few simple sentences. He had easily provoked the anger of the Miao tribesmen. To the Miao tribe. The holy maiden of the Miao tribe was their faith. The Miao tribe's holy maiden selection was the most sacred matter. But Yi Qing Luo used such a method to destroy the fairness of the holy maiden selection. Chapter 2788. Miao Rongrong's henchmen were still hooting. The Miao tribesmen's emotions were also stirred up. The scene was out of control. Even the Miao tribesmen went up to pacify them. The Miao tribesmen were waving their arms and shouting. They needed an explanation from the person who revealed the selection questions. They needed Yi Qing Luo to give them an explanation. The onlookers were the guests from the other continents. It wasn't convenient for them to say anything now. Now the Miao tribesmen were extremely agitated because their beliefs had been blasphemed. If they opened their mouths, it would be easy for them to direct the fire onto themselves. The scene made Miao Rongrong's henchmen and the rest revealed a complacent smile. Suddenly, someone in the crowd started to shout, "Miao Yi, step down! Miao Yi, step down!" The deafening slogans gave the Miao tribesmen a chance to vent their frustrations. One by one, they started to shout along with the slogan. The lady who was standing on the stage faced the hooting and cursing of the crowd. Her exquisite little face turned pale bit by bit. Her petite figure was trembling slightly. A pair of lively eyes stared blankly at the tribesmen below. Everyone's hooting and cursing were reflected in her pupils. No matter how strong she was. No matter how mentally prepared she was. But when she saw this scene, it made Miao Yi's strong heart start to show signs of collapse. She had obviously relied on her own hard work to get to where she was now. Why was it that no one was willing to believe her? The lady's slender figure started to bend down under the pressure. She wanted to curl up. She wanted to hug herself and stay away from all the doubts. Miao Yi's performance didn't make the Miao tribesmen feel any sympathy. On the contrary, the hooting became louder and louder. "Hey, you said I gave the sacred maiden selection questions to Yi to cheat, do you have any evidence?" Just at this moment, a cold voice leisurely suppressed all the cursing and hooting. Following that, they saw the red-robed young lady who was sitting in the first row lazily supporting herself on the man's shoulder as she stood up. His red robe cascaded down like a raging fire in high spirits. The young lady's gorgeous face had a trace of indifference and laziness. It was just such a lazy posture. But for some reason, it made the pressure in the air to become extremely heavy. Miao Rongrong's henchmen's smug smiles froze on their faces. The powerful pressure made it extremely difficult for them to breathe. The square instantly fell silent. Only the girl's lazy laughter could be heard. It was like a feather that swept through everyone's hearts. "You brought this matter to my ears. If there is no evidence, I will be very angry." The girl's voice carried a hint of a smile, as well as the unique sweetness of this girl. After all, what I hate the most is being the scapegoat. Miao Rongrong's henchmen felt a chill run down their spines, and their bodies trembled. After a long time, he finally found his voice again, and with a choking voice, he forced himself to mutter, "This. What other evidence is there even a need for? This is something that the entire Miao tribe knows about. Apart from you, who else could possibly have the means to help Miao Yi cheat? With just a mouth? Then, can I say that you are also cooperating with that young lady to cheat in the sacred maiden selection?" Yi Qing Luo smiled as she pointed at Miao Zhilian, smiling contentedly. Chapter 2789. Venomous Slander. Yi Qing Luo smiled calmly. I'm very curious. Those people who looked to be in their 30s or 40s had personally said that there were several types of goo poison in the second round of the Sacred Maiden selection. Even they didn't know the method to nurture and cure it, so how did a 14-year-old young lady like you manage to answer it? Yi Qing Luo pointed at those people who were Miao Rongrong's henchmen as her eyes curved into a smile. So I also suspect if you had colluded with those people to get hold of the Sacred Maiden selection questions in advance and then made those people intentionally shift the suspicion of cheating onto Yi, to confuse the public. Yi Qing Luo's words were spoken word by word, her tone was very certain. Yi Qing Luo's aura was originally strong. He acted as if he was serious, and the words he said made people believe him. Miao Zhilian's face instantly turned red as her eyes turned red. You're spouting nonsense. I've been familiar with the art of goo since young, so naturally I'm clear about it. I'm different from Miao Yi, that trash who was born without a father to teach her. Miao Zhilian was still young. She had been nurtured as a Sacred Maiden candidate since young. Naturally she was proud and arrogant. How could she tolerate Yi Qing Luo's slander? She was so infuriated that she lost all rationality as she started to ramble. Miao Yi cheated and you want to drag me down with you? What evidence do you have to say that I cheated? On what basis do you say that I cheated? Just based on the fact that you have the Overlord? Without the Overlord, who do you think you are? Miao Zhilian's words made Miao Shuaidan, who was standing by the side, flung her hand away as she shrunk to one side. Yi Qing Luo was obviously protecting Miao Yi. Yi Qing Luo was obviously going against Miao Zhilian. If she helped Miao Zhilian, she might get into trouble. The moment she was abandoned by Miao Shuaidan, Miao Zhilian regained some rationality. She recalled what she had said earlier. Her face turned pale instantly. Subconsciously, she looked towards the direction of her parents. But her own family had all averted their gazes. Apparently, they had decided to give up on her. Miao Zhilian's heart seemed to be pressed down by something fiercely, making her unable to breathe. Moreover, Yi Qing Luo didn't give her a chance to breathe. What evidence? Since they don't think it's necessary, then there's no need for it. Yi Qing Luo smiled as she tilted her head, as she looked towards the direction of Miao Rongrong's henchmen. After all, don't you Miao people believe that as long as you open your mouth, everything is the truth? When in Rome, do as the Romans do. Immediately, the clamoring clansmen calmed down. They looked at Miao Zhilian, then at Miao Yi. Following that, he turned his head back and took a look at Miao Rongrong's henchmen and looked at Yi Qing Luo. For a moment, he didn't know who to trust. Yi Qing Luo's smile was very faint, without any fluctuation of emotions, but other than your Miao tribe's simple-minded folkways, there's another point which is worth me to ponder over. She raised her eyebrows. Her eyes were like torches as she stared at the selection platform, at the two elders who had ugly expressions on their faces. She enunciated each word clearly. You Miao tribesmen don't trust your own elders, so why go through so much trouble to organize the Sacred Maiden selection ceremony? The faces of the Miao tribesmen darkened. The judging elder could no longer sit still. He stood up and was about to speak. Chapter 2790. She raised her slender brows and with her gorgeous looks, her smile was beautiful but cold. The Sacred Maiden selection is to your Miao tribe, they should be clearer than you on how sacred it is. Yi Qing Luo's interrogative words came one after another. All the Miao tribe's tribesmen turned silent. These Miao tribe's tribesmen were unable to leave the Miao tribe's territory because of the tribe rules. As a person, they were naturally more innocent. Just a few words and she was able to influence their thoughts. Miao Rongrong's henchmen could do it. So could she. Looking at Miao Rongrong's henchmen and the others' ashen expressions, Yi Qing Luo's smile deepened. The few Miao tribe's elders' faces turned green and white. Yi Qing Luo's words made their faces turn red. They wanted to refute. But Yi Qing Luo's words were the truth. Only, when Yiqing Luo said it in front of so many guests. She exposed the internal discord in the Miao tribe, easily provoking the trust. They felt embarrassed and annoyed. The Miao tribe's elders all knew that those who started the rhythm were Miao Rongrong's henchmen. They also knew why those who started the rhythm would intentionally disrupt the sacred maiden selection. But, they had to admit. After those people raised Miao Yi's doubts. Even they themselves started to doubt whether Miao Yi had cheated or not. This kind of thinking. After Yiqing Luo brought it out in the open. It made them feel ashamed. You're just pestering endlessly. Miao Rongrong's henchmen and the others were unreconciled as they gritted their teeth. We have nothing to do with Miao Zhilian. Yiqing Luo, the more you confuse the public, the more I suspect that trash Miao Yi to pass the first 3 rounds of the sacred maiden selection. Yiqing Luo laughed lightly. Whether she has anything to do with it or not, it's not for you to say, but me. The smile on her brows was enchanting, but it revealed an obvious chill. If I show the evidence that Yi didn't cheat, then... Can you show the evidence that Miao Zhilian didn't cheat? Miao Rongrong's henchmen and the others were stunned as their faces revealed a suspicious expression. Evidence? What evidence could they show? They hesitated. Yiqing Luo became overbearing. Why? Don't dare. Are you afraid that the matter of you slandering the Holy Maiden candidate will be exposed and punished by the Holy Maiden, or are you afraid that the matter of you secretly colluding with Miao Zhilian will be proven? Yiqing Luo's voice was very leisurely, with a slight smile. Clear and sweet like a silver bell, pearls and jade falling on a plate. No matter how one listened to it, it was extremely comforting. However, everyone felt that, the ruthlessness in that voice seemed to be able to drag them into an icehouse with a wave of his hand. Miao Rongrong's henchmen were so frightened by the invisible chill that they forgot to retort. And this hesitation. This made the Miao clansmen as well as the guests to confirm the truth of Yiqing Luo's words. Miao Zhilian was so angry that she burst into tears on the spot. Nonsense. I didn't cheat. I did not collude with those people. I don't even know that group of people. Miao Zhilian's exasperation was a stark contrast to Miao Yi's calm and elegant demeanor. The elders of the Miao tribe could not help but think. From the very beginning, when Miao Yi was condemned and questioned by everyone, Miao Yi had never opened her mouth to defend herself even once. She stood there with a calm expression. Her back was straight. Her gaze was extremely determined. Chapter 2791. The 2 judging elders looked at each other and nodded their heads. Following that, they looked towards Yiqing Luo's direction at the same time. One of the judging elders stood up. Since there are tribesmen who questioned the sacred maiden selection's fairness, then, in order to ensure the sacred maiden selection's fairness and holiness, I am willing to accept Miss Ye's suggestion. The other judging elder also stood up. I wonder what evidence does Miss Ye have to prove that eldest young Miss Miao did not cheat? If Yi's innocence is proven, how do you intend to deal with that bunch of people? Yiqing Luo gave a meaningful smile as she shot a glance at Miao Rongrong's henchmen and asked with a light smile. The judging elder was an astute person as he immediately slapped the table. The sacred maiden candidates are protected by the ancient Gu king of the Miao tribe. If eldest young Miss Miao's innocence is proven, those people are scheming to slander the sacred maiden candidates, disrespecting the sacred maiden and the Miao tribe. I will definitely punish them severely. Punish? Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes. The severe punishment that elder mentioned, to what extent will it be? This. The judging elder didn't expect Yiqing Luo to ask this question as he muttered to himself for a moment. What does Miss Yi think should be done? They are slandering Yi. If it is proven that Yi is innocent and did not cheat, then these people should be handed over to Yi to deal with. The rest of the Miao tribe are not allowed to interfere. Yiqing Luo spoke with a matter-of-fact look. These words sounded reasonable. But if one listened carefully, it was indeed overbearing and unreasonable. Miao Rongrong's henchmen and the rest, even if Miao Rongrong and Miao Yixiong had fallen, they were after all the Miao tribe's tribesmen. According to Yi Qing Luo's suggestion, they should be handed over to a young lass like Miao Yi to deal with. This was truly a challenge to their authority as elders. But, the current situation. No matter how uncomfortable the judging elder was, he had to nod his head in agreement. Actually, the way to prove it is very simple. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled up slightly as her eyes shone with a crafty glint. Don't you feel that? Yi was able to answer all the questions in the Sacred Maiden selection because she cheated? Why not we let you set the questions randomly, as long as it is related to witchcraft, you can ask. As she spoke, she glanced at the 3 candidates on the stage. Her slender fingers traced them and pointed at them one by one. Do you dare to accept it? The young girl's voice was very soft, but each and every word was like a heavy stone, heavily pounding on everyone's hearts. Miao Zhilian was so frightened that she stopped crying. Miao Shuadan's face turned slightly pale. She clenched her sleeves tightly, not daring to answer. Miao Yi's beautiful eyes, which had been emotionless all this time, finally showed some ripples. Miao Yi raised her eyes and met with Yi Qing Luo's resolute smiling eyes. Her long eyelashes fluttered. For no reason, her heart seemed to be covered by a warm current. Miao Yi closed her eyes. When she opened them again, she raised her red lips and spat out one word with determination: I dare. The judging elder was startled. He furrowed his white eyebrows and reminded her, Miss, you have to think this through. If you can't answer or answer the questions wrongly, you will really never be able to wash away the suspicion of cheating. I've thought it through. Miao Yi didn't hesitate at all as her tone was filled with determination. If I can't answer, I'm willing to accept punishment. Miao Yi's words ended. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.